The Maya had thousands of books, folding screens of bark paper painted by hand with their history, their gods, and their astronomy, the recorded mind of one of the greatest civilizations in the Americas. A whole library of a people, at least it was. Because on a single day in 1562, one Spanish friar gathered those books into a pile and set them on fire, the largest book burning in the history of the Americas. Today, out of all those thousands, just 4 survive. To feel the scale of that loss, you first have to understand what the Maya had. The Maya were not only builders of pyramids and cities, they were readers and writers. They developed the only complete writing system in the ancient Americas, a rich script of hundreds of signs that could record their spoken language fully, the way these words record mine. They wrote in books they made from the inner bark of fig trees, coated with fine lime plaster, folded like a screen, and painted in brilliant color. And they wrote a lot. Maya scribes were a respected, trained class. They filled their books with the things a great civilization records: astronomical tables that tracked the planet Venus across the sky and predicted eclipses with stunning accuracy. Calendars more complex than the ones Europe used at the time. Histories of kings and dynasties, maps of the heavens, rituals, prophecies, and the deep lore of their gods. Temples and palaces held libraries of these books. This was a civilization with a written memory stretching back centuries. Now hold that picture of a living library in your mind, because here comes the fire. In the middle of the 16th century, after the Spanish conquest, a Franciscan friar named Diego de Landa came to the Yucatan to convert the Maya to Christianity. He was intelligent and driven, and he actually learned a great deal about Maya life. But he was also a zealot. And when he discovered that many Maya who had been baptized as Christians were still secretly worshiping their old gods, keeping idols hidden in caves, he reacted with fury. On July 12, 1562, in the town of Mani, de Landa held a ceremony the Spanish called an auto da, an act of faith. He had gathered up the sacred objects of the Maya and he destroyed them. By his own account, he burned 27 Maya books, along with around 5,000 religious images and idols. He judged the books to be full of, in his words, superstition and lies of the devil. So he burned them. De Landa himself wrote that the Maya watched their books go up in flames and were grieved by it to a surprising degree. Of course they were. He was not just burning paper. He was burning their science, their history, their scripture, their memory. He was burning the recorded mind of a civilization. And the number he gives, 27 books in one day, is almost certainly only part of the destruction across the whole campaign to stamp out the old religion. If a story of what was lost and what survived is the kind of story you came here for, take a moment now and subscribe to Obsidian. The conquest tried to erase whole worlds of knowledge, and we are here to remember them and stay close, because out of that fire, something almost unbelievable survived. How many Maya books made it through? Out of the thousands the Maya once wrote, only 3 complete pre-Columbian books are known to survive today, along with the fragment of a 4th, 3 and a piece. They are named not for the Maya, but for the European cities where they ended up: the Dresden's Codex, the Madrid Codex, and the Paris Codex. They survived mostly by accident, because they had been shipped off to Europe as curiosities before the fires, far from de Landa's reach. Think about that ratio. An entire civilization wrote for centuries, and we are left with 3 books and a scrap. The Dresden Codex alone, one of those survivors, contains astonishing astronomy, including a table tracking the movements of Venus across decades. If that level of knowledge is in the handful that survived, imagine what was in the thousands that burned. Histories we will never read. Sciences we will never recover, the voices of countless Maya scribes, silenced in a single generation of flame. That is the tragedy. But this story has one of the strangest twists in all of history, and it belongs to de Landa himself. Years after the burning, de Landa's harsh methods got him into trouble. He was called back to Spain to answer for his cruelty toward the Maya, and while he was defending himself, he wrote a long account of the Yucatan and its people, a book called The Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán, the account of the things of Yucatan. In it, trying to explain the Maya, he recorded their customs, their calendar, and something he thought was their alphabet. Here de Landa made a fascinating mistake. He assumed Maya writing worked like Spanish, with letters for sounds, so he asked a Maya scribe to show him the signs for the letters of the Spanish alphabet. The scribe gave him signs, and Delanda wrote them down. He had misunderstood the script, which was far more complex than a simple alphabet. But in writing down those sign and sound pairs, he accidentally preserved a real piece of how Maya writing worked. And here is the twist that defies the whole point of the burning. Centuries later, in the 20th century, scholars trying to crack the Maya code were stuck. The writing had gone unread for hundreds of years. Then a brilliant researcher used Delanda's flawed little alphabet as a key. It turned out those sign and sound pairs were a vital clue. With them, and decades of further work, scholars finally began to read Maya writing again, to decipher the inscriptions on the temples and the surviving codices. So consider what Delanda actually did. He tried to erase Maya writing from the world. He burned their library to ash, and then, almost by accident, in the very book he wrote to justify himself, he left behind the key that would one day let us read the Maya again. The man who destroyed the books also, unknowingly, helped save the script. History rarely writes irony that sharp. Look at what survived to understand what burned. The Dresden Codex, the finest of the three survivors, is a masterpiece of ancient science. It contains detailed tables tracking the planet Venus across its cycle and tables predicting eclipses, calculated with remarkable accuracy across long spans of time. The Maya astronomers who made it were watching the sky for generations and writing down what they learned. If one surviving book holds astronomy like that, the thousands that burned were the scientific library of a whole civilization. Maya writing was also far more sophisticated than Delanda ever realized. It was not a simple alphabet. It was a rich system that mixed signs for whole words with signs for syllables, allowing scribes to write anything they could say. A skilled reader could record history, poetry, prophecy, and science. This was full literacy, the equal of any writing system in the world, developed entirely in the Americas with no outside help. For centuries after the burning, that writing was silent. No one could read it. The breakthrough came in the 20th century, and one key figure was a Russian scholar named Yuri Knorozov, working far away during the Cold War. Using Delanda's flawed alphabet as a starting point, he showed that the Maya signs stood partly for sounds. Other scholars built on his work, and slowly the glyphs began to speak again. Another scholar, Tatiana Proskoryakov, made a second great leap. She showed that the inscriptions on Maya monuments were not just about gods and stars, but recorded real history, the births, reigns, victories, and deaths of actual kings and queens. Suddenly, the Maya had a readable past again with names and dates. The civilization that Delanda tried to silence began telling its own story once more, in its own words. It is worth sitting with the scale of what was lost. The three surviving books are mostly about religion and astronomy. The burned thousands would have included histories, genealogies, land records, songs, prophecies, and knowledge we cannot even guess at. An entire civilization's written memory, the work of countless scribes across centuries, reduced to 3 books and a fragment. It is one of the greatest losses of human knowledge in all of history, and the Maya were not alone in this. Across Mesoamerica, the Spanish burned the books of other peoples too, including the Aztecs, whose own painted manuscripts were largely destroyed. Only a handful of pre-conquest codices survive from all of ancient Mexico combined. A whole world of written knowledge, built up over many centuries by many peoples, was deliberately fed to the fire in the name of conquest and conversion. As for Delanda himself, he did not fall from grace for long. After being sent back to Spain to answer for his cruelty, he was eventually cleared, and he returned to the Yucatan, where he became the bishop of the very region whose books he had burned. The man who destroyed the Maya library died a respected church leader. History's judgment came only much later, and it has not been kind. Picture the books themselves. A Maya codex was a long strip of bark paper smoothed with white lime plaster, then folded back and forth like an accordion into pages. Scribes painted them in red, black, and blue, with glyphs and images marching across each page. Closed, a codex was a neat bundle. Opened and stretched out, it could run for many feet. A continuous painted scroll of knowledge. These were beautiful objects made with great care, treasured, and stored in temples and noble homes. And the burning at Mani was not only about books. The same Inquisition tortured and punished many Maya people accused of clinging to their old faith. The destruction of the codices was part of a broader campaign of fear meant to break the spirit of a people and force them into a new religion. The fire that consumed the books was lit by the same hand that brought suffering to the living. It was an attack on a culture, root and branch. But the most important fact is the one that defies him entirely. The Maya are still here. Millions of Maya people live across Mexico and Central America today, speaking their languages, keeping their traditions, and in recent years, Maya communities and scholars have begun teaching the ancient glyphs again, so that Maya young people can read the writing of their ancestors. The script DeLanda tried to erase is being learned once more by the descendants of the people who invented it. There is a deep, defiant justice in how it all turned out. The destroyer's own notebook became the decoder ring. The civilization he tried to silence is being read again, taught again, and spoken again by its living descendants. DeLanda wanted the Maya past to vanish into smoke. Instead, the smoke cleared, and the writing is still here, slowly giving up its secrets. It is important to be honest and clear. DeLanda's key did not bring back the burned books. Those are gone forever, and nothing can undo that loss. But it did help us recover the ability to read what the Maya carved in stone and painted in the few surviving pages. The fire took the library. It did not in the end take the language, and here is the most defiant truth of all. The Maya did not vanish. This is not a story of a dead people. There are millions of Maya alive today, across Mexico and Central America, speaking Mayan languages, keeping their culture, descended directly from the people whose books were burned. The conquest tried to erase their written memory, and it did terrible damage. But it did not erase the people. They are still here, so the story of the Maya books is not only a story of loss. It is a story of survival against the odds. 3 books and a fragment slipped through the fire. A destroyer's own writing became a key. The script was cracked, the stones can be read again, and the people endure. The empire burned the library and thought it had won. But you cannot truly burn a civilization that refuses to disappear. What endures is the reading itself. Every time a scholar today translates a Maya inscription, every time a Maya child learns the glyphs of their ancestors, a little of what DeLanda tried to destroy comes back to life. The fire at Mani was meant to be an ending. It turned out to be only a chapter. If you want to keep recovering the worlds they tried to burn, Obsidian is just getting started. I will see you in the next one.